Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey there, hi there, ho there. This is Ralph Hayes Jr., RH Jr. Reality Check, coming to you live over the system of tubes that we bring called, bringing you yet another broadcast at a highly irregular hour. And this is not working. Testing, testing, 1, 2. Back, you hideous beast. We shall try this again. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. And it clicks on the wrong. What the heck? Playlists. Computer. This is highly irregular, Dave. Open the pod bay doors, Dave. The computer's not cooperating, Dave. Okay, and here we go. Testing, testing, 1, 2, testing, testing, 1, 2, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey there, hi there, ho there. This is Ralph Hayes Jr., RH Jr. Reality Check, coming to you live over the internet through a series of tubes known as the boob tube we call YouTube, bringing you another broadcast, another contribution, another pile of litter on the information highway, a little broadcast I like to call Spleen Squeezins. Can you dig it? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's Freak Uni. It's Freak Uni. Freak Uni's in the house. Hey, it is way too late at night, and I can't help it because I'm full of caffeine. And I need to get more Dr. Pepper. I need ice. I need an ice tray. I've got a refrigerator. I haven't got any ice trays. It is amazing. When you live like I live in a debris-strewn state. I feel good about myself. I actually managed to get about 4 or 5 bags of trash out to the curb tonight. But there's just so many things. I'm out of garbage bags, and I'm out of. I don't have any like saran wrap, and I think I'm out of aluminum foil too. And it's amazing the number of things that you suddenly discover you're out of. You know. Like, just little things, you know. Like, I realize I haven't had a usable things you take for granted for having around the house. Ice tray, you know, one of those things you fill up with water, stick in the fridge, and voila, ice. And I haven't had one in years. And every time I get a drink that's lukewarm, I'm thinking I really should get an ice tray. And by the time I'm in a position where I can buy an ice tray, I forget about the ice tray. It's not a good thing. Okay, for some reason, this thing is lagging. Okay, and the music has stopped for no flippin' reason. I'm starting it over just to vex people. Okay, let's. YouTube is not receiving enough. It has a little button here that says, it posts up a notice that says, YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. As such, viewers will experience buffering. Oh no. And this is somehow my fault. I pay nearly $80 a month just to keep on the internet. And, no, I'm paying close to 90 actually. It's going crazy. I looked at it, several months back. I was thinking, okay, I'm starting to have problems with the internet. Maybe if I upgrade it. I upgraded, nothing changed. They didn't send anybody out. They didn't send me a new modem. They just, clicked it over, so I'm no longer paying, $60. I'm now paying $90. And I'm still suffering the same bullshit. So, boy, this was money real well spent. And I don't want to switch to another. I don't want to spend the rest of my life, wandering like that blind guy with the lantern, looking for an honest man. I'm trying. I want to get internet service. Just have it be predictable and reliable, and and at least moderately affordable, and just not have to think about it over and over again. I don't want to have to hunt for a new internet service provider. I don't want to have to hunt. I don't want to have to just. But I don't even want to talk to these people. I just want them to provide the service that they promised me, and do it predictably. No, I'm not asking for the moon. Wish I knew what it is that's clogging the system. Let's see here. Cancel. I'm starting to wonder if my internet's, I don't know. It could be 10,000 things, and I don't have enough know-how or time to figure them all out. Okay, the internet has been marketed to Joe Sixpack. It should not require a degree in computer programming and engineering to figure out why your computer isn't working right. You see, this YouTube Studio comes with a little window that shows what's supposedly being broadcast. Is this working? So your microphone's on. And the window is freezing up. There are no good answers for anything anymore. You see, this is what happens. It's corporate culture. Now, when I talk about corporate culture, you got to realize, you take a company that starts out, it thrives, it grows, it gets bigger, and after it reaches a certain size, it develops an internal parasite. Corporate culture, like a tapeworm running entirely through its entire digestive tract from one end to the other, slowly sucking away the life nutrients of it. Corporate culture is, I've become an advocate of this concept. Corporate culture is basically people in a bureaucracy whose only marketable skill is bureaucracy. Corporate culture is made up of people who believe that any business can be run the same as any other. That if you follow the playbook, the corporate playbook, you can run any company. It doesn't matter whether you're selling salsa or oven mitts. It doesn't matter whether it doesn't matter whether you're making movies or frozen pizzas. They think that, they think that as long as you follow the spreadsheets and the PowerPoint presentations and you shift your paradigms and think outside the box and have your people talk to my people, that the system will run. These people, one, are this is coming from, this isn't just coming from me, this is coming from other people, thousands of people probably, but one in particular I'm thinking of that said that enlightenment is somebody who has worked in corporate fields in two different Fortune 500 companies. He says they are the dullest frickin' people on the face of the earth. They think in corporatese. They have no actual creative abilities. They don't make anything. They don't produce anything. They don't create anything. They just want to sit in the back and order things around. They do not, they're dull. They're boring. They're, as individual people, and it reflects in the fact that their only talent is being corporate. Second, they hate, they mistrust, they do not trust creative people. And they think that all their customers are morons. And he said, the guy was talking about it, he said, I could close my eyes and I would not be able to tell the difference between the companies I worked in. He had worked in two different, like I said, two different Fortune 500 companies, that were as diametrically opposite as they possibly could be. Completely, radically different companies, but the corporate culture was absolutely identical. He could close his eyes in any office meeting, he wouldn't be able to tell where he was. And you got, and when you're talking internet providers, they think we're not people to them. We're a line item on a barcode. We're a line item on a graph, and they think the same way about if they're running a movie theater, if they're running a movie studio, they don't look, they don't they don't understand why their product is popular. They don't trust the people who made it successful, and they want focus groups of people as dull and boring and uninteresting as themselves to explain it to them. That's why they have focus groups. The guys that were in charge of Game of Thrones, they openly admitted. First of all, they admitted that this was a fantasy series. The Game of Thrones books were a fantasy setting. And they said they deliberately excluded as much of the fantasy as they could because they wanted to appeal to people like soccer moms and football jocks. This is about as productive an effort as McDonald's efforts to appeal to vegans. Corporate culture people do not think in long term. As long as they only think as far as the next quarter. And as long as the line items on their little charts are okay, they don't care. They don't care about making a company last for generations. They don't care about making a product that will stand the test of time. They don't care. They don't care about the company. They care about the corporate. They care about their corporate family. They care about the bureaucracy. And they hate creative people, and they hate the fans of creative people. because they themselves are boring, uninteresting people with no interests or talents in common with the customers they serve. And no amount of satire can seem to penetrate the ironclad bulletproof blast doors around their mind. They're never going, we can talk about this all day. They're never going to wake up. They're never going to have an epiphany. Good Lord, I'm as dull as dishwater. And, I know nothing about the product I'm making. I know nothing about science fiction, fantasy, or movies, and I'm heading up a multi-million dollar project to air Lord of the Rings again. It's basically like when Homer Simpson tried to design a car. According to this thing, there's something or other that's slowing things down. I wish I knew what. Uh, a certain question dawned on me. I've been ranting on this for the past couple of shows about how this we blame uh, we look at as conservatives and common people, we look at the entertainment industry in particular. This is seems to get most of our attention, unsurprisingly. We look at the entertainment industry and we see how it's been turned into a dumpster fire, and the obvious first explanation is because it's gone completely off the left side of the tracks. It's you've got they're out there making feminist movies and LGBT movies, and they're trying to ram all this crap down our throats. Instead of looking for the best director for Star Wars, they're out there looking for the best feminist director for it. That kind of thing. It causes you to back up. And first question that comes to mind, there's a certain amount of truth to, they're not left or right. They're only interested in making money. They're only interested in making money. Well, obviously, the people who are using the entertainment industry as a soapbox for their social views are not the ones that are the ones spouting all this SJW drivel care more about their message than about the money. But somebody in there has to care about the money. And how does this mesh together? How does the fact that there is a corporate, how does the soulless corporate aspect of things, how does it dovetail with the deranged SJW aspect of everything right now? And I had to think about that for a while, and it struck me. I finally thought back about it. How long has leftism been just flooding? I'm not just talking leftism. Let's talk leftism. Let's talk militant feminism and socialist jibber jabber and LGBT stumping and race baiting. Everything's about race. Everything's about You don't like my movie because I'm black. No, I don't like your movie because you're foul mouthed and you suck. But how does that dovetail? How does something as so risk averse and mechanistic and soulless as a corporate culture, how and why did it start adopting leftism? Now you'd think that at least some of the corporations would be going the other way. 50-50. Some would be, you'd think that all they care about is money. So you'd figure they'd all be raving right wingers. Trying to sell red MAGA hats. But no, they're not. They're almost uniformly leftist. And I had to think about that, and I thought about how long has this been going on. I thought for decades. And I thought back, and I thought about back to the 50s, the 40s, 50s, 60s. Again, it comes down to boomers again, but round about the 50s and 60s is when everything in Hollywood culture started veering hard left. And it occurred to me that we're assuming that, and then I remembered this picture I saw. This picture said, somebody was making fun of the rebel personality. We're so counterculture. And, they had a photograph of somebody running around in a Guy Fawkes mask. And then they showed a photograph of a factory in China mass producing the masks. And I'm like, there's the answer. There's the answer right there. For the past half century, maybe more, the entertainment industry, the corporate culture infiltrating the entertainment industry has been repackaging leftism and selling it back to them. You got to realize, everybody talks about what rock and roll rebels, the rock and roll rebels of the 50s and 60s, and and the psychedelia and Woodstock. Woodstock was a corporate event. It was. Woodstock was a corporate event. I bet you didn't know that. Round about the middle of it, they lost complete control. The fences came down, and everybody just poured in. But it was set up by the corporation. It was they were taking this hippie revolution, wrapping it up in Saran wrap, sticking a price tag on it, and selling it. It's a Che Guevara T-shirt. It's a Guy Fawkes mask, mass produced in a Chinese sweatshop. It's for the past. For most of the past 100 years, corporations have been taking the, have made a moneymaker out of the so-called counterculture. And the thing of it is, in the past 20 or so years, it's bitten them in the ass. What it was, they came around, picture this. A social justice warrior sits down across from a CEO. An SJW and a CEO sit down at dinner, and the CEO goes, "Let me get this straight. You can make you can make whatever horrible crap you want. You can do whatever horrible things you want. Oh yeah. You can do whatever you want. Make whatever horrible things you want, and nobody can criticize you, because if they do, and nobody can criticize you. Yeah, nobody can criticize us. And if they do, what happens? Oh well, we just call them racist and sexist and homophobe, and they run away. And the criticism goes away. That CEO, he probably sprung wood so hard he flipped the table. Think about it. He looked. The corporate world looked at the leftist ideology, and the feminist movement and all this other stuff, and realize, that they thought they had a product nobody could criticize. They figured they could take they figured that they could take the SJW movement and do with it what they had done with the hippies back in the 60s. Just repackage it, stick a pretty bow on top, and sell it for a ridiculous price. And with the social justice warrior victim class mentality, nobody would be allowed to criticize it, no matter how bad it got. That was their image. That was their picture. That was their vision. They thought they had the perfect, unimpeachable product, a product that nobody could bar, nobody could complain about, nobody could turn away. What they didn't count on is that over the last 50 years, the counterculture movement has become so caustic. It's gotten more and more extreme, more and more radical, more and more expansive and uncontrollable. We went from gay pride to suddenly having so many different genders and sexualities that nobody can keep track anymore. You need a score sheet. Say what you will about the 70s, but at least we knew which bathroom we could go into safely. And they tried to package up SJW and resell it back, and it exploded in their faces. Boom, splat. The CEOs thought they had a product nobody could refuse to buy. The SJWs thought that the CEOs were going to give them the keys to the kingdom. It was a marriage made in hell. And to the surprise and dismay of the CEOs, it didn't work so well, because the SJWs don't know how to keep their mouths shut. You see, because there's centuries-old tradition in corporations, in the corporate culture, to talk smack about the customers behind closed doors. Like I said before, the people in corporate people in the corporate culture think that everybody, they think that customers are idiots. And again, the inside guy I was talking about, he said he'd listen, and he would have to sit there and listen to some CEO ranting and raving about how the stupid customers didn't know what they wanted and had to be told everything. When the frickin' CEO wouldn't listen to what the customers said. The SJWs watched, monkey see, monkey do. The SJWs, they listen to, behind closed doors as the CEOs badmouth their own customers. Then the SJWs went on public when their movies and their remakes and their repilots and their feminized, bisexualized, progressive SJWized product didn't sell. They went out in public and insulted the customer base. The people that don't watch this show, they're toxic fans.
They're toxic fans. They're you know they're racist and they're sexist and yeah 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 yeah.
They did, monkey see, monkey do. See, corporate executives do two things: complain that the customers are stupid, and try to shift blame when the customers aren't stupid. And so that's what the SJWs, except they did it out in front of people, in the mainstream media and on the social networks, and you know, it gasoline on a fire just brought about their end that much faster. They might have persisted like this for decades more if it hadn't been for the COVID lockdown. You see, because, for instance, Disney doesn't make money from its movies. It hasn't in decades. In fact, there was a point where it was looking like they were going to shut down their animation studios entirely and become a, a cruise line and amusement park company completely, because that's where all the money was coming from. They sort of forgot that the cruise lines and the amusement parks were themed on the movies they were famous for. They had to walk back on that real quick. And now here they are. Their parks closed down, their studios closed down. Everything shut down because of this COVID panic, and they're dying on the vine. It didn't even take a couple of weeks, and already they've gone in, several $billions in debt and loans just so they can keep the ball rolling. It's a bad state of affairs. And there's a part of me that says, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? There's not really much that you can do about it, but, just not buy their crappy products. It wouldn't be so bad if you actually could ignore them. That's the thing of it. We live in a world that even if you don't buy the product, that they make a lousy movie or TV show or book or magazine or whatever, and they bring it out, and no matter where you turn, they're assaulting you with it. Market saturation to the nth power, and you can never get any peace from it. Just turn the TV set off, and every time you walk down the street, there are 10,000 more TV sets blaring at you. And it doesn't help when the fact is that what they're desecrating used to be something that you personally loved. Well, really not much you can do about it, not much you can say. And you're tempted, you're tempted to go, this is the way it's always been, this is the way it's always going to be. But I've lived just about 50 years, and I got just enough experience to realize that that's not necessarily true. I can't begin to describe to you what it was like. Some of you out there, you weren't even alive when the Soviet Union was. You don't know what it was like. You can't imagine. Knowing that on the other side of the ocean was this massive tyrant empire that was slowly swallowing one country after another. and it was and the people that ruled it were determined to conquer the world. They believed it was their manifest. They believed it was their manifest destiny to bury us and to make our children dig the holes. And knowing that these people had weapons pointed at you, they could kill. They wouldn't even have to leave their bedrooms. They'd push a button, and 15 minutes later, you'd be dead. That was the reality that we lived with every single day of our lives through the 70s, through the 80s, and clear to the end of the 90s, pretty much. And then one day, boom, the Soviet Union fell down inside. It collapsed inward. It just fell down like a house of cards. I remember seeing the footage of the Berlin Wall coming down. Then we had a wake-up call in Tiananmen Square. We thought this was the end of the communist tyranny. Communist China proved us wrong. Slaughtered their own people on national TV and then dared us to do anything about it. And our president, much to my shame, ran right over there to glad hand everybody and make sure that our trade deals were still okay. Never mind that they were murdering people who were protesting for democracy. What they did, but what they're doing now to the protesters in Hong Kong is nothing. I mean, quite literally nothing compared to what they did at Tiananmen Square. I remember seeing the footage where they were stacking up bodies like cordwood. Kids who were armed with nothing but signs had been mowed down with machine guns by their own government. This is the kind of this is the kind of ideology that our corporate idiots think that they can tie a ribbon around its neck and sell it in a t-shirt shop. Living under the nuclear age, you can't imagine what that did. Especially when you're a Christian and people start talking about revelations and the end times, and you are consciously, painfully aware that the end times was that the president was walking around with a nuclear football tucked under his arm that could bring the end times that much quicker. There was a book, people were making, it's a go-to thing for would-be prophets these days. Back those days, there's a book came out, a book I read myself. It's called The Late Great Planet Earth, where basically the guy who wrote it was, had all interpreted all sorts of prophecies that the Soviet Union was going, was Gog and Magog and going to bring about the end days. I sort of had my fill. I decided I had my fill of Bible scholars doing studies of Revelation when round about the time of the Second Gulf War, well, actually around the time of the First Gulf War, I was flipping through, a Christian magazine, and there was, an ad for a Bible study class drawn on there, and For a drawing, they had the four horsemen of the apocalypse wearing turbans and riding camels. Bible prophecies in light of current times. And I'm like, yep. Think I'm going to give that one a pass. Everybody was convinced. It's not surprising that people think the end of the world is coming when their particular corner of it gets blown to kingdom come. The people forget that the Bible also says there will be wars and rumors of wars till the end of days. And every time a new war pops up, they think it's a sign of the end times. That's the irony of it. They're going to be so busy looking for the signs of the end times, they'll miss them completely. That's human nature for you. Oh my, lost my focus. If I was put in charge of creation, or and suppose there people have all sorts of speculations about what God's going to have people doing in the, after, when eternity finally gets here. There are a lot of people who like to theorize that because, we're such creative beings, that we may be given a part in the creation of the next universe. Thoughts like that. Total wild fantasy speculation. Nothing to base it on really. Anyway, I'll tell you one thing. If I was in charge of creation, if I was, God sits you down and says, "All right, draw up a draft for Earth 2.0." I would make, either way you look at it, I would make sex a heck of a lot less important. If you can follow what I'm saying about that. Because it seems like the vast majority of problems that humanity has cultural, social problems. So on and so forth. So many issues, tangled up in sex. I would either I would either make it, I would either take sex and make it way less interesting to people, or I would make it way less risky, so that, ethically speaking, whatever you did sexually didn't matter so much. See, most people, the morals and ethics that God handed down through the Bible about sex weren't just Him, raining on everybody's good time. People don't want to get that. People don't want to believe that. People don't want to think that. People are dumb enough to think that they can, ameliorate those risks enough to make to make it ethically irrelevant, and they can't. It just strikes me that it's counterproductive, socially speaking. It's just our, maybe it's just our bad luck. We live in a fallen world where one of the greatest pleasures in life, as a consequence, maybe it's just a consequence of our being in a fallen world, that one of the greatest, most intense, and powerful pleasures in life is also such a ball of neurosis and risks and hazards that it has to be handled like nitroglycerin almost. And I hate to break it to you, to some people, but sex is still incredibly dangerous, even with all our medicine and our antibiotics and our penicillin and our advanced medical technology and the birth control and all this other stuff that we have. Even with all that, it's still a very risky proposition for both genders. And to be fair, it's the woman. And to be fair, it's the woman that bears the larger share of the risk. The man, generally speaking, the risks he bears consists of things like social censure, uh, maybe a venereal disease, or an irate uh, husband or spouse or brother or father coming after him. Strictly, speaking in the most general terms. But the woman, she faces the shortening of her life, really, because just carrying a child to term puts an immense strain on the body, and that's when everything goes right. And very few pregnancies are there where everything goes right. My sister had three daughters. My sister had three daughters. The youngest was a preemie. 100 years ago, it would have been a catastrophe. As it was incredibly dicey. My mother, I am her oldest. My sister is 4 years younger than me. About midway between us, about 2 years after I was born, my mother had a second child, or would have, but she miscarried. And when she had Debbie, it was a very, very difficult pregnancy, and they had to. They had, I believe, they had to give her either I forget whether it was a hysterectomy or but she could never have kids again. And that's with in the wealthiest country in the world with the most advanced medical science available. And we're not just talking about risks of pregnancy. There's this, the emotional problems, psychological, emotional, psychological. It's just, long story short, it's sex is dangerous. Sex is frickin' dangerous, as in it could kill you, and not just by AIDS either. People forget that all these other little diseases that syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, those things all have horrible consequences too. Without intense medical treatment, there are several diseases. There are several diseases that are incurable, such as herpes, and there's at least one that is 100% incurable and 100% lethal: HIV. So yeah, the morals that God handed down, the law handed down about sex, that it was to be confined between a man and a woman and in marriage. Wasn't just him trying to rain on people's parade. It was him trying to protect humanity from something that could literally drive us to extinction. Or render us such a disease-rattled wreck that flooding the earth again would be a mercy killing. Still, my point that I was making is that knowing all these things doesn't make sex as it is any easier to deal with. I can't speak for what it's like for women. But for a man, it's basically like, congratulations, you have been born with a built-in heroin pump. And when you hit puberty, it's going to turn on. And it's going to be on all the time. But you're not allowed to push the button and start it. So yeah, kind of a drag. Sex needs an off switch. And so do children. No, that won't work. Frankly, in order to have the free love, you know, anything's permitted kind of sexual world that people seem to want. It would require radically changing everything about life. And I don't just mean social, like human life. I'm talking about life on planet Earth. Life. everything from our hormonal and chemical makeup. Did you know? Have you ever heard about this? The same when a man and a woman have sex, the woman experiences a similar hormone release that she feels when she holds her baby for the first time. Think about that. It's a bonding hormone. I'm not sure what I believe. I don't think it's the same for the male, but that I could be wrong about that. But the woman definitely experiences that. It's supposed to, it strengthens the bond with her mate. You would literally have to change how people's brains work for casual sex to be completely harmless. Chew on that one for a while. You'd have to change how disease spread, how and how the body prevents disease from spreading. You'd have to change, uh, you know, the you'd have to change the connection between sex and pregnancy, and childbirth, and you'd have to change everything. We wouldn't be recognizable as human beings after all the changes. I don't think. Wait a minute. Where's the commission? I'm looking for commissions. Commissions folders. Commissions folders. Here we go. I keep losing everything. If any of your topics so far tonight, you took a refresher class to renew your concealed carry licenses, expiring in June. There were only two people in the class. There were only going to be two people in the class, and you were one of them. Oh, well, you and your father were. But the third guy never showed up. Not sure what to think of that. Excuse me. Let's talk about something. Yeah. Now that we've talked about sex wishes, let's move on to another topic. Concealed carry. Okay. Feeling I like this one. Here's a column, supposedly popsci.com. Yeah. I'm not trusting that name. But it says people with extreme political views have trouble thinking about their own thinking. It's another one of those articles where somebody tries to be very intellectual about saying everybody who disagrees with me is dumb. I want to punch anybody who calls themselves moderate. You're moderate. Because first of all, you sit them down and you grill them about their beliefs, and guess what? They're never moderate. Okay, they're not nearly as moderate as they think. They're always well to the left or well to the right. They just don't want to admit it. Which is somebody who claims to be middle of the road or moderate. They're basically trying to, so what? You're levitating there in the air above the rest of us. That's what it amounts to. They think they're better than everybody else, and they're just, and they're going to give us a Mahatma Gandhi speech from their, from their elevation up on a cloud over us. It's not the people with extreme. In a sense, it's not the people with the extreme views that drag a country in one direct, into danger. It's not. It's the teeming herd of indecisive, sorry sons of guns mooing about in the middle. Because they won't take a stand on anything, and they'll just drift with the stream and with the currents. They'll go whichever way the wind blows, to the left or to the right, and they're useless to nobody. But once they get moving, they trample everybody else underneath. You think everybody in Germany during World War II was a Nazi? No. And yet, they followed right along behind Hitler and his clowns. A great big moving mass of inert nothingness, squashing everything in front of it, wherever those with a vision led them. Moo! Moo! I'm a moderate. Great. Just stand over there. We'll milk you later. Get out of the way. The adults in the room are trying to save the planet. Another thing is that they're not only apathetic. They can a herd. They can be they're hypocritical. They're inconsistent. I'm middle of the road. For instance, here's an example. People who say they're middle of, I'm pro. They think they're middle of the road because they say they are. They think that their stance on, for instance, the death penalty versus the stance on abortion, and the only people a person who believes a pro-life person who believes in a pro-life person who objects to the death penalty thinks they're moderate. A person who approves of the death penalty but also approves of abortion thinks they're moderate. Neither of them is. You see, the reason that they're not. They're hypocrites. Look, the only person with a morally consistent outlook is somebody who both supports the death penalty and opposes abortion. Why do you say something so daring and yet so true? It's like this. A person who opposes abortion and supports the death penalty does so for the exact same reason. Because they believe in the sanctity of innocent life. If you are a murderer and you smash another human being off the face of the earth, there is nothing that you can pay for that life with but your own life. To give even a life sentence that's congratulations, you've just guaranteed, we're punishing you by giving you free food, clothing, shelter, 3 hots and a cot, free medical care, free everything, free legal advice and everything for the rest of your natural life until you die of old age, or until somebody shivs you in the lot outside, but no. By refusing to make somebody who has committed the ultimate crime pay the ultimate penalty, you are devaluating the life of the innocent person they murdered. Abortionists oppose abortion because an innocent child dies when an abortion goes through. Same stance. They oppose, the murder of innocents. They value the sanctity of life. A judge who puts a man away for 50 years, 50 years, puts a murderer away for 50 years, just basically said that the murder victim's life was wasn't worth anything more than it cost to give somebody a stay at Club Fed. I love these hypocrites who say, "Oh, you're pro-life, but you won't do anything for the baby after it's born." Well, let's see about that. I don't know much about caring for another person, but I think a critical first step in doing right by another human being is not killing them. And second of all, suppose I have a kid over here. I have a kid over here. It's my kid. Tell you what, he's 5 years old. If you, suppose I stood up, in front of the courthouse and said, if you don't pay, for my child's, upbringing, I'm going to go push him out and take him and throw him out in front of a train. Who's morally responsible for what happens next? You went out, you created a life. You and you alone are responsible for it. I'm sorry about this, but ever since the Old Testament, we've gotten past the point where a child was something a parent could dispose of if it was inconvenient. Yeah. Life is hard when you're a single mom or a single dad. No shit, Sherlock. It's not too much fun for anybody else either. There are millions of people all over this world haven't got a fraction of what you have as a single parent living in a Western civilization. Shut the hell up. And if you are such a soulless bastard that you won't even care for your bastard, give the poor kid over to adoption. There are adoption agencies packed to the walls with parents who have been waiting for a child to adopt. We don't rate the sanctity of life based on how much they're wanted by whoever is convenient. Yeah, nasty stank. I'm sorry, that issue just pushes all my buttons. They go out, get pregnant or get somebody else pregnant, and suddenly it's everybody else's responsibility. If you're such a sorry sack of shit that you won't take responsibility for the child that you brought into brought into this world, then turn the child over to somebody who will. That's not a license for you to murder. This is the thing about the Old Testament. People are horrified when they read in the Bible, in the Old Testament passage. There's an Old Testament passage in the Old Testament law, in the Hebrew law, where it said that if it says that the parents could have their children stoned to death. Yes, actually it does. But it's not what you think it means. You see, in that passage, it says that if the parents decided they could no longer bear raising the child, they were to bring the child before the village elders, the tribal elders, and tell the elders, to their face. Both parents had to be in agreement. First of all, they had to say, we cannot. This child is, basically they had to say the child was a monster and they couldn't raise it. And the tribal elders had to agree with the both of them. And then the whole village, the whole tribe had to come together and put the child down by stoning. Now, why is that not so horrifying as you think it is? Even before this, first of all, it never happened. There is not a single recorded instance in all of Jewish history of any biblical, all the way back to Bible time. There's not a single record of a set of parents doing that ever. Second of all, the Old Testament law didn't give them permission to kill their kids. They had that already. They had it already. Before the people of Israel came out of Egypt, the tribes of the Lord, this was perfectly normal. It was perfectly acceptable to kill your kids whenever you wanted. People were sacrificing them to their pagan gods, or deciding that we can feed 3 of them and not 4, and leaving one to die of exposure out on the rocks, or pushing one off a cliff if it looked like it had tossing one off a cliff if it looked like it had a defect. That scene in Sparta 300. That was true. That was what they did. If the child had any sign of defect, they'd throw it off a cliff to die and be eaten by wolves. These were horrible people, and this was the normal. This was normal. The Hebrew law didn't give them permission to kill their kids. They had that already. from every culture in the world. What it did was say, no. You have to take, you have to come before the law, before your society, before your family, before your tribe, and before your God. Before you can even think about it happening. You can't just come home, have a bad day, snap the kid's neck, and throw him out a window. Everywhere else, that was perfectly acceptable. You can't measure the Old Testament people, the Old Testament tribes by currency. You had to measure them by what was the alternative was at the time. The Hebrew people were the first people where rule of law was a standard rather than rule of men, rule of nobility. That passage, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, that was about legal equality. You see, back then, if a peasant broke the tooth, got in a fight with a member of the nobility, and broke the guy's tooth, he could cost him his head. They said, no, it's not going to be like that. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It doesn't matter what tier of society you're born into. It was the first society that had laws protecting women. It stated if a woman was sexually assaulted, she cried out for help, then she was not to be held guilty under any circumstances. But if she was in a situation where she could have cried out for help but did not, then things proceeded differently from that point on. It prevented a lot of those Monday morning regret kind of rape accusations. They had laws that protect. Yes, they had slaves, but those slaves, one, were not to be taken by kidnapping. Man-stealing was a death penalty, instant death sentence. Most, the slaves in Israel were people who were paying off debts. They were only to be servants for a limited time. Usually, it ended at the year of Jubilee. There's a thing if it was every 7 years or every seventh year. I think it was every 7 years. Well, every 49 years, there would be a year of Jubilee where everybody rested. The ground was allowed, no crops were planted. The ground was allowed to lie fallow, which is why Israel's land stayed so fertile for so long. Old people's land was returned to its heirs, and all servants, all debts were forgiven, and all servants were freed. All slaves were freed. They were protected against, servants were protected from violence by their masters. The law stated that the master had to provide for their needs, clothing and shelter and food. And up and down the line, they were given better rights than most they were given better rights than most hired people today. Most people don't, people don't know that. They get their entire lessons about the Bible from a basically from a 14-year-old atheist reading the Bible in a condescending voice. Have I seen the movie Juno? No. How about we call them baby choppers? Because that's how they get the baby out of the womb. Fun night of the pro-choice crowd. A baby in a blender. Whee! I don't think, Instacart. Everybody talking about Instacart. We don't have Instacart here. That's why there's all these services talked about on the internet. None of them here in Marietta. Bastards. What the hell did Ohio do wrong? I swear. Okay. Goodness. Does anybody? Yeah. Let's talk. You got any questions? Anything you'd like to ask about the stories I'm writing, about the comics I'm writing, about the anything?
Why won't you do anything for my,
Why won't you do anything? Here's an answer for these people. These pro-choicers.
why won't you do anything for a child once?
What the hell else do you want us to do? I forgot how many thousands of adoption agencies there are in America alone. It was the churches that built the first orphanages, not the government. Before that, the kids just slept in the street. Gutter rats, We're out there. Well, the first thing we're doing for them is trying to keep their parents from murdering them. We built schools, we built orphanages, we built adoption agencies. But you won't, you're so sorry. You'd rather have it scraped out of your womb with the equivalent of a coat hanger than just wait 9 months and then hand it over to an orphanage. Because that'd just be just too inconvenient. It's a hell of a lot more inconvenient for the kid than it was for you. Drive-in church services. There you go. People can adapt. People can survive. I was saying yesterday, you'd think more churches, I've heard a couple of churches have started, doing services on, church services on Zoom. I think my dad is doing one like that, pre-recorded or something. He finally, if I asked him, he'd be, "Oh, it was a great idea I had." But in the audience, will he? Oh, in the audience, will he ever be in a relationship? Man, am I ever going to get those chapters written? Uh, in the audience, Arcturus. He will be in a relationship, but he will not be marrying a pony. In case you were wondering, do you realize how disturbing that sentence would sound out of context? It's not all. It's a little disturbing in context, but but you realize how disturbing that sounds. But yeah, he's not in the he's going to have a relationship eventually, but not the way you think. Is the new comic in Nip and Tuck part of a commission? Yes, it is. It's the first of 5. Well, actually, the first of 10. Now, I've done up a little scribbling on the second one, and I'm hoping to get it done by, well, let's see, midday. uh, I think I confuse some people with my personal boundaries. Well, sorry, I just thinking out loud. Uh, yes, it's part of a commission. It's a little too simplistic to be anything else. Like, none of the main characters, no backdrop in it. The next chapter of the audience, I'm still noodling. It's basically going to be a chapter set in the Crystal Empire, where we're going to get yet another ascendancy. So much, so many ideas and so little execution. Mm. Uh, What ideas would you have for an isekai story? Now, an I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Isekai. I don't know. Okay. Arguably, The Warcrafter is an isekai story. Kind of. Actually, it's an ROB story, so I don't know if it qualifies. It's as I recall, an isekai story is more. Let me get a specific definition here. is the portal fantasy isekai, translated different world, is a portal fantasy subgenre of Japanese light novels, mangas, and video games. It revolves around a normal person from Earth being transported to, reborn, or trapped in a parallel universe, usually a fantasy world. Loosely speaking, that's what I've been writing. The audience would qualify as an isekai. Now, there's a lot of varieties. You can have one where it's a fantasy world, one where you're reincarnated, one where you're teleported when you into a new world, right? One where the world was a fantasy game in the world you came from. More specifically, Rise Up Animal Road. That's the one where the pro wrestler who wanted to become a pet shop owner gets transported to another world, correct? I only saw the first episode, and let's say I've never ever in my life seen a movie, show, TV show, book, never read a story like this, where the hero of the story, upon his arrival, suplexes the princess into the floor. She looked at him and serious communication problems because he's an animal lover, and she informs him that he needs to save the world by going out and killing all these horrible beasts out in the wilderness, and he thinks he thinks she wants him to go out and like kill puppy dogs and stuff. and, and he doesn't say where. He just walks up, grabs her, flips over, boom, drops her into the floor. I nearly peed myself. Oh my. And it turns out that the world he's in is full of these monster creatures. It's also full of half human creatures, cat girls and bunny girls and wolf men and and he freaks out the local thugs because he stumbles across one, and it's a cat girl and a werewolf, and he's a puppy, and he grabs the werewolf and starts rubbing his tummy, and the dog's like, "What?" The wolf's like, "What the hell are you doing?" It was hilarious. I regret I haven't taken time to watch more of it. But what ideas would I have for an isekai story? That would be all of them. Why do you just call them crossovers, man? Because I do a lot more crossover stories. Isekai stories, straight up isekai stories. Well, there's a tiny little bit of it depresses me a little bit. Because when you do an isekai, when you do a story where ordinary Joe goes to a magical world and becomes a hero, there's a certain amount of self-insert there, and and writing that, as a writer, you have to put yourself in the protagonist's shoes, and I. At the same time, in writing, every sentence is a reminder that there are certain that I'm not really happy with my current life or my circumstances, and I don't need to be dwelling on the negatives in my life like that. It hurts a little bit, because I write a story about where I've been transported to a world where I'm a brave hero who's with superpowers and in the real world I'm sitting here and I can't even walk the length of my trailer without getting winded because of how bad shape I'm in, and how messed up my legs are. And it's a slightly painful reminder. If I write stories, it's usually about one character being inserted into another world. A character from one fictional world arriving in another. It's like, I try to avoid self-insert. The writing the audience was a little hard enough when it was just because the protagonist is basically just me, without some of the physical problems I now have. I started writing, the audience back when I was still just, a fat guy with swollen legs. Now I'm a fat guy with badly deformed swollen legs, elephant legs, and just no. But I'll get over myself. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about me getting over myself. I get all sorts of ideas all the time, and I've had ideas for several different versions of Deku the Warcrafted. Just little one-shots, omakes, I think they're called. I had an idea where instead of being a paladin, he becomes a hunter. An elf hunter, Not that he hunts elves, that he's a night elf. He's a hunter who's a night elf. And another where he becomes a worgen. I had an idea for a crossover between I had an idea for My Hero Academia and a crossover with My Hero Academia and How to Train Your Dragon. Actually, two different ideas from that one, now that I think about it. I've still got a couple of ideas for Harry Potter Vampire Prince, yeah, just little one-shot scenes, not a really whole developed story or anything. And ideas are cheap, man. You just shake them up, Draco Day, still waiting for a response to your email about story ideas. I know not to which you refer. I apologize if you sent me an email and I never answered it. NOUKF. There's a rather old fan fiction I did. It's on Archive of Our Own. It's called The Audience. Originally, it was going to be a one-shot because it was about this guy who gets transported to Equestria, and the first chapter is basically just him having his first meeting with Princess Celestia. But it kept going, and it grew, and it's been sitting idle for a long time, over a year actually. I really need to write some more on it. Your message has been retracted, Draco. It won't show. You may have to. I don't know. Sorry. Anyway, go to archiveofourown.org. Look up RH Jr. or Reality Check. Or am I on there as Reality Check or RH Jr.? I can't remember. But just look up my stuff and read my stories. Yeah. A druid? No, Arthur Arcturus in the audience was basically just a self-insert under a different name. Arthur Arcturus isn't really me. He's, for one thing, he's got working legs, and he's fat, but he's not nearly as fat, and he's got a lot more style and class than me. So he's who I would have liked to have been. Yeah. Uh, in no in Deku the War. You're thinking of the Warcrafter. I've got the Warcrafter is with Adrian. With this guy, this random cosmic entity picks up a guy, turns him into a World of Warcraft Worgen druid, and drops him in the world of Worm. Deku the Warcrafted is basically a sequel to the Warcrafter, where the Bayleaf, the main character's shop, the Lost Workshop, is now one of those magical stores that wasn't there yesterday, and it's popped into the world of My Hero Academia. Izuku wanders in, and ends up leaving as a paladin. And there are going to be several other characters. There are several other characters that are going to wander into the store and leave radically changed. Warcrafter, yeah, that's the one where he's a druid. Well, read My Little Pony stories, darn you. They're cool. So there, yeah. I wrote those back when the show was good. Ha. Back when the show was good and the fan fiction was bad. Anyway. Question about Discord. The My Hero Academia crossover. In the My Little Pony Discord, he hasn't made an appearance yet. Basically, the idea is that the main six and the princesses are basically voyeurs watching the events in My Hero Academia, and the same as as in Worm. Ladybird. Anyway, he's not made an appearance. Discord is not going to make an appearance in My Hero Academia. I don't think so. And he's not going to be allowed to fiddle faddle with things. Discord as a character is too much. He's too much all at once. Too much on a cracker. If you get what I say. Uh, you've already got a room full of magical alicorn princesses mucking about with Izuku's life. He doesn't need a Draconicus. Why didn't they just call him a Chimera? Why didn't they just call him a Chimera or a Chimera? No, they got to make up this dragon horse thing, and he resembles neither. One isekai type story. Okay, I don't know anything about the Elder Scrolls or Oblivion or the Dragonborn or anything like that. And from what I've seen, I'm really not interested. There are some interesting things about first road up, but no. I looked at the game. And I decided, okay, these people have flown up their own rear end. No, not interested. Well, let me put it this way. Everybody, I was just not going to get the vibe of the game because everybody was looking at it. Everybody's, oh, look at these awesome graphics. Oh, these graphics are so amazing. Look at the graphics, the pretty pictures, the graphics. I looked at it, and with my poor, inexperienced eyes, I saw something that looked like a fright mask carved out of rubber. It didn't look right. It was grossly overdone. I mean, when a whole game, it's one thing when one character is in the uncanny valley, but when the whole game world is in the uncanny valley, they've tried too hard. People will throw a fit. This is the greatest game ever. No, it's the greatest game graphics ever, and they suck because they tried too hard. They put if they had put a fraction of the effort, and the programming power that went into trying and failing to make the graphics look lifelike. If they had taken that energy and put it into making the gameplay, the game itself bigger and better, they might have, they might have got my attention. Let me put it this way: nobody goes to watch The Incredibles because of the amazingly realistic, lifelike animation, right? Most of you'll notice that most of the CGI movies, Toy Story, Cars, the Incredibles, the so on and so forth. The art, Monsters Inc. They're not afraid to make to use a cartoonish style, and it works better. I mean, I remember I saw the Spirits Within. What was that? It was. I forget what the first part of the name was of the movie. It was called The Spirits Within. It was based off of some video game again, and it was about these alien spirits, tearing out people's souls and stuff, and it was just really weird. But they tried to make the characters, the human characters, look as real as possible, and it fell so hard. It wasn't an uncanny valley. It was an It was an uncanny canyon. I mean, Wile E. Coyote would be sailing down into the bottom of this thing. Okay, what do My Little Ponies think of these weird human creatures? I don't know what you mean by that. They look kind of funny. But Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. Man, that movie sucked. Well, anyway, I looked at Oblivion. I looked at a little bit of it, and I'm like, and the graphics, and the and what was worse is the humans looked terrible. The other races, the cat people looked even worse. The lizard people were horrifying. It was just bad. It just looked awful. And I could just picture myself sitting there, just slowly getting a throbbing headache, trying to play this game and follow it along with these excruciatingly bad graphics. And everybody was sitting around praising it. It was so, oh, it's awesome, because the cool graphics. This is the problem with this is one of the problems with the video game industry today, is that the point of making a game is to make a good game, not to make a hardware software demo package. Okay. Sometimes less detailed graphics is better. As I've noticed this before, most of these people make these games, and they make them bleeding edge. Literally bleeding edge, and so few people can play them on their computers, because you're cutting yourself out of millions of people who have had their computer for 3, 4, 5, 10 years even, and they can't play these. You got to figure the majority of people have computers that are several years older and several at least a generation or two behind on graphics technology. But these game designers, they see all these new graphics capabilities and get this massive art, massive CGI boner, and start pushing everything to the point of ridiculousness, and it doesn't even look good. I'm sorry, I saw Red Dead Redemption, just Oblivion, Red Dead Redemption, countless games. And the graphics just ugly. They would have been better off with a more stylized look. Let me see here. Remember WildStar, the game I used to play all the time? They had a very stylized, very cartoonish looking graphic style, but it worked perfectly. What's more is my graphics card could handle it easily. A game that if they had used the same graphics that World of Warcraft had at the time, it wouldn't have looked as good, and my game would have bogged down. Let's see here. I'm looking for a few images here. Here's that's an actual game character right there from the character designer. And the ads they did, the ads they did, they used the graphics from the game to make the ads. And it looked fantastic. These are in-game graphics. You understand what I'm saying? I'd show you an animation, but the way this is hooked up, it would just be a herky-jerky mess, and you wouldn't be able to see it. It's a crying shame the game. The thing that killed WildStar is that they kept overshooting the mark. They launched and they didn't have enough servers. The servers got flooded, and so the servers got flooded. People got fed up with the wait times and dropped off. And just as everybody started dropping off, they got a bunch of new servers and plugged them all in, and suddenly they had bunches of empty servers, and that just made more people unhappy because where is everybody? And so and then they lost more people, and they compiled all the servers into one thing, and then it got overcrowded again, and back and forth like that, until they went free to play, and then they faded away. Broke my heart, I kid you not. Now I'll tell you this much: the game areas, they could have stood to make the game map larger, given more area. Because if you turn the graphics, you couldn't escape. After playing it a while, you couldn't escape the feeling that you move from region to region. You didn't feel like you were moving from region. You felt like you were moving from one area in an amusement park to another. Because the next zone over was just over the next hill, and you could see part of it if your graphics were high enough. So they could have stood larger maps. But again, but the point was that even back when I started playing WildStar, I hadn't put in a new graphics card yet, and my computer was barely chugging along on World of Warcraft with the graphics set way down low. And then I load up WildStar, and boom, everything is so fluid, and everything's so sharp, and everything was so gorgeous, and it wasn't ridiculously over detailed. You had tons of detail. But you didn't have every grain of sand being rendered like you do in Oblivion. Not every single pebble has to be ray traced, okay? That's one of the player houses right there, that image right there. You would not believe the player housing that people came up with. And it was extraordinary. What during that they used to joke that the housing, the player housing, was the end game content, because that's then by that point everybody was playing just to gather up stuff to build new stuff in their housing. You could have a house that was a spaceship. I had a couple of those. I had you could have one of these houses, one of those houses, one of those houses, one of those houses. And that was just to start out. That was your starting template. Everything else you did on the lot of land around it, that was your own thing. The idea is that you had this flying chunk of land that you built on top of. Weird notion, but I've seen weirder. I wish I had taken stills of my house lots. Because I got pretty darn inventive. I should have taken videos while the game was still active. This was years ago. See, this is the difference between a good game and a overwrought one. Oh yeah, I had to just I was at one point I was pondering doing a Wildstorm My Little Ponies crossover. It was a weird time. I could still do it, but I'd have to work entirely from memory, and I'd get so many details wrong about the game. Uh, Okay, I have to say this much about the game: the closer you got to the end game content at the time the game closed, uh, it did sort of prove one of my theories. Though it could have presented as a proof of my theory, is that our current generation, our current culture, you know, is more afraid of germs and corruption, of germs and infection than anything else. We're not afraid of losing our freedoms. We're not afraid of losing our freedoms or our liberties or even our souls, as much as we are afraid of getting some icky African disease. Because the boss monster of the entire game, the ultimate villain, the end monster, is this tumorous, infectious thing that's slowly spreading over the planet that the game is set on. And there are entire zones that are nothing but fields of pustulent tumors and stuff. Entire missions that revolve around exterminating a plague before it escapes from a laboratory, or that kind, and trying to keep yourself from being infested with some mutating tumor disease. I played Minecraft for a while. In fact, somebody donated enough for me to get the license and everything. Play. I've still got it on my computer, but it was rather fun for quite some time. Just the open sandbox. I didn't play with the monsters on. I'm not a masochist, but I just sort of sandboxed around and had a good bit of fun. But then I found out about then I found the cheat codes, and I could just type in a line, and suddenly I could have a 1,000-foot high block of whatever material I wanted just appear in midair. And well, the game lost all allure for me. It was like just because once I knew about once I knew the codes, once I knew about the codes, uh, I could never play the game straight again. Couldn't play it, ordinary again because, the entire time I'm digging away, digging away, digging away, diggy hole, trying to get, say some coal or some obsidian or whatever resource I was trying to accumulate enough of, that would be in the back of my mind. All I have to do is type in this, and I can have whatever I need. And I wouldn't say it lost the challenge, but well, I suppose, yes, that's the only term for it. It ceased being challenging and became point. It went from being challenging to being pointlessly difficult. If I'm making myself clear, is that once I knew the cheat codes, it ceased being a fun, challenging game and became a game that I was making pointlessly difficult for myself. And that was no longer fun. Oh. Oh, the Sonic movie got all the praise it gets. Oh, well, I'm glad to hear it was good. I'm a very cynical man. I looked at that, I looked at those horrible, those original trailers with the horrible graphics, and then I saw them remake the graphics, and I thought to myself, yeah, they didn't have this planned out. No. Right? I figured I was sitting up to thinking, it was just a play. I figured they were just trying to make a badly made, underselling it. They were going to come out and first they were going to make it look so bad that when they threw even a tiny crumb to the fans, by not making the graphics suck, that everybody would just lap it up. So, but if it's actually a good movie, well, kudos to them. If it's got a good script and a good story, and I figure Jim Carrey is probably hilarious in it. I'll be honest though, Jim Carrey gives me the creeps. He does. He's like, he's as raunchy and rude as the name of that comedian. Ugh. I can't remember the name of the comedian. The one who gave the voice to the genie. I keep thinking Richard Simmons. That's not right. Brain skipping a groove. Well, anyway, he's not. It's just that the guy that plays Robotnik in that movie, he's got this sort of creepy pedo stalker vibe to him somehow. Robin Williams. He's like Robin Williams if Robin Williams was creepy and disturbing, and it's just no. They're bringing the drive-ins back, I see. Well, there you go, adapt, improvise, overcome, I gotta figure there's gotta be thousands of abandoned drive-in theaters all over America. Well, maybe hundreds. All they take is a little mow, maybe paint the big screen, little wiring check, and away you go. Well, Draco, you take care of yourself, all right? If you gotta bail out. Uh, Minecraft is basically Legos 2020. Yeah, Jim Carrey is. What I'm saying. What I'm saying is that Jim Carrey, Robin Williams wasn't any less rude and crude, but Robin Williams, he had this sort of charm to him. This sort of sad charm to him. You know what I'm saying? Jim Carrey, on the other hand, looks he does that, particularly when he does that Grinch smile. He does it all the time, even when he's trying to smile normally, and it's like, yeah. There's just something about Jim Carrey that is just creepy. I don't know what Doctor Stone is. Oh, Doctor Stone. That's the anime about the guy and goes to gets turned into a statue in the future and has to rebuild civilization, etc. I've been meaning to watch that too. It looks fascinating. Very surprisingly pro science and progress. You don't see too many shows like that anymore. I doubt it. I doubt that I doubt that the shut-in, that the lockdown is going to continue for much longer. They can't. It simply can't. The country cannot sustain it for as long. Can't really sustain it for as long as it's going on. But it really can't take it any longer. Any longer. It's, it's just too much for our society to take. So I don't think there's going to be enough time for them to start getting the to start cranking up a new drive-in movie theater boom. But they might be renting them out for like church services and things like that, something like that. And these people that still believe the COVID virus shutdown is legitimate. Man, it's worse than dealing with global warming fanatics. Well, the experts all say, they're getting off, they're getting their rocks off on being scared out of their minds by the government, and and lecturing everybody else that disagrees with them as if they were stupid. the experts say that the virus could spread it, and I'm sorry. Look, I don't care how many experts you trot forward. Experts lie too. And no listen to what the experts have to say, but test what they have to say. Check over what they have to say, because first of all, experts have been known to lie, and second of all, they've been known to get things wrong, and third, no expert on earth should outrank your own ability to use your eyes and ears and do basic math. These people predicted deaths, they predicted 10 to 100 times the number of deaths that actually happened. And other doctors go, no, it's not the quarantines that is preventing the spread. The majority of people who have come down with the coronavirus were people who were already sheltering in place, who were shut-ins, that's where all these people are ending up in the hospital. They came out of quarantine already sick, and yet you don't. If this disease was as dangerous as you say, all these essential workers, we ought to call them expendables. That's how the corporations are thinking of them. I guarantee it. All these essential workers who are out there running cash registers and stocking shelves at stores, they should be dropping like flies, because they're the ones who are getting the most exposure, most possible exposure to the disease. But they're not. Homeless people, we're not stacking up dead homeless people like cordwood, are we? No. But these people are running around. The end is nigh. This is the thing. This disease is a problem, but we're not handling it right. The sensible approach, which could the mortality rate and the case rate in Florida, for instance, is a fraction, not even a tenth what it is in New York State. A sensible approach would be to quarantine. It would be thousands of times easier to quarantine those who are actually at risk from the disease. There's only a vanishing minority for whom the disease would be deadly, and that is people who are already extremely elderly or have comorbidities. They have lung conditions, heart conditions, so on and so forth. Those are the people who should be going into shutdown, not everybody indiscriminately. Free movies in the park through the summer. Hope they can still hold it. I'm sorry, I'm just rah about it. Dr. Stone. I really would like to see it. I'll have to sit down in front of Crunchyroll and cue it up. And from what I understand, the show is very meticulous about detail. They show him when he doesn't just wake up one day, go out with he doesn't pull a Gilligan. He doesn't he's not like the professor on Gilligan. He doesn't go out and take a couple of coconuts and build a light bulb. Well, it's not that they're not destroying the crops because they're afraid the food's infected. That's not the reason. The reason they're destroying it is because they can't get it to market. See, this happened back in the Great Depression. It was part of when the Great Depression was starting out. Suddenly, boom! Many businesses collapsed, including transport companies. Prices went skyrocketing. Transport, the farmers couldn't afford to get their cattle to market. It suddenly became too costly, and they had no choice. They couldn't keep feeding the animals. They were ending up having to kill the animals and just toss them in a ditch. This is and the farmers today, same problem. With the country shut down, there's no transportation. There's no way to get the food to the market. All of us are expendable. You got to admire the guy who came up with the idea of the movie The Expendables and the sequels. We're going to make an action movie. What's it about? Explosions. Who's it going to star? Everyone! I mean, they literally had every action picture, action movie actor in Hollywood in those damn things. Everybody, even Chuck Norris, man. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Whoops. My headset went off. I was just trying to... That is scary, man. I've seen pictures of Arnold. I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger. That man is 70 some odd years old. 70 some odd. He's old enough to be a great grandfather. My father is like in his 70s. He's a great grandfather. There's Arnold Schwarzenegger up there, built like a and Sylvester Stallone, built like a brick shit house. And I mean, he's flexing his arms look like bags full of footballs, What do you mean, great alicorn hunt Twilight smart? I think I missed a portion of this conversation. Ah, darn it. I'm trying to wrap my legs here and trying to keep the bandages stuck on while I reach for the wrap. Haha. Great Alacon Hunt Twilight. She's falling behind on finding things, and Fluttershy and Pinkie Pie haven't gotten anything in. Well, yeah, they haven't had. I haven't gotten around to having those characters find anything. It's well, darn it! Come here, you things falling off the head and falling on the floor and. Give me a second here. Pulling these band-aids tight. There we go. And there we go. All right. Oh, Dr. Stone, yeah. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Just scratching there. All right. Mm. Okay. Mind's wandering. I shouldn't let my mind wander. It's too little to be out on its own. Might not find its way back. Am I thinking of, if I put my, I've been thinking about doing my comics in written form, maybe with a few illustrations. See, at least, Tales of the Questor or Space Ranger. I might. I'm still saying might. Maybe I'm on the fence about it. I'm really not going to rewrite all the ones that went before. No, 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 no. Hell no, actually. Uh, no. Oh goodness. Okay, it is okay. Looking at series, it is. Well, it has been 2.5 hours. It is 3 in the freaking morning here. I think that for safety and sanity's sake, we're pulling off the road today. We're pulling off the information highway now. So I'll be okay. I have no idea when I'll be back on. So I have no idea when I'm going to sleep and when I'm going to wake up. So it's God's own guess. I will see you later. Thank